You're making $85,000 a year and somehow you're still broke. Meanwhile, your friend who makes $52,000 just booked a trip to Japan and has 6 months of expenses saved. The math isn't mathing and it's driving you insane. Here's what nobody tells you about building wealth. You're trying to play offense and defense at the same time, and you're losing at both. Like you're clipping coupons while also working 60-hour weeks. You're meal prepping chicken and rice while simultaneously paying for a gym membership you haven't used since February. You're caught in this weird financial limbo where you're too broke to relax, but too busy trying to earn more to actually fix the spending problem. My name is Nick, and what I'm about to show you is going to completely flip how you think about managing money. Because the people who actually build wealth don't try to do everything at once. They pick a phase, commit to it completely, and then switch when the time is right. Let me introduce you to a concept that bodybuilders have known for decades, but somehow the financial world completely missed. It's called bulking and cutting. In fitness, bulking means you eat in a caloric surplus to build muscle. You're not worried about having perfect abs. You're focused purely on getting stronger. Then, once you've built that foundation of muscle, you switch to cutting. You dial in your diet, drop the excess fat, and reveal what you built underneath. You don't try to do both simultaneously because that's how you spin your wheels for years without making progress. Your finances work exactly the same way. There's a time to bulk, financially speaking, where your only job is to increase your income as aggressively as possible. You're not obsessing over whether you're getting the best price on toilet paper. You're playing offense. Then there's a time to cut where you've maxed out your earning potential in your current situation, and now you need to ruthlessly optimize what you're keeping. You're playing defense. The catastrophic mistake most people make is trying to play both games at the same time, which means they never win at either. Let's talk about what financial bulking actually looks like. You're in your 20s, maybe early 30s. Your income is probably somewhere between embarrassingly low and moderately acceptable. This is not the time to be reading articles about how to save $3 on laundry detergent. This is the time to be borderline obsessed with increasing your market value. Financial bulking means you're working the side hustle even though you're tired. You're taking the course that costs $500 because it'll get you the $15,000 raise. You're saying yes to the project that's going to make you look good even if it means working late. You're switching jobs every 2 to 3 years because that's statistically how you get the biggest pay bumps. During this phase, your savings rate might actually look terrible on paper. You might only be saving 5% or 10% of your income because you're reinvesting everything into yourself. You're buying the nicer work clothes because you're meeting clients. You're paying for the networking dinner. You're living closer to the office even though rent is higher because you're saving 2 hours of commuting that you're using to learn skills. This looks financially irresponsible to people who don't understand the game, but here's the thing. If you can increase your income from $45,000 to $85,000 over 5 years, you've added $40,000 of annual earning power. That's permanent. That raise happens every single year for the rest of your career. No amount of coupon clipping will ever match that return. The math is absurd when you actually run it. Like, let's say you spend an extra $3,000 a year during your bulking phase on things that increase your income. Professional development, better work setup, living in the right location, whatever. That feels expensive. But if those investments help you increase your income by even $10,000 annually, you're getting a 233% return on investment. And unlike stocks, this compounds in your favor forever because your new baseline salary is now higher. Your next raise comes from that higher number. Your next job offer is benchmarked against that higher number. But here's where people screw this up completely. They stay in bulking mode forever. They keep chasing the next raise, the next promotion, the next job hop, and they never actually stop to optimize what they're keeping. I've seen people making $150,000 who have less in savings than people making $60,000 because they never switched phases. They increased their income, but they also increased their spending at exactly the same rate. They got the bigger apartment, the nicer car, the expensive habits, and they're still living paycheck to paycheck just at a higher altitude. This is where cutting comes in. Financial cutting is when you've reached a point of diminishing returns on income growth. Maybe you've topped out in your current role. Maybe you've hit the salary ceiling in your industry without going back to school. And maybe you've simply reached a compensation level where you're comfortable and you don't want to grind harder. Whatever the reason, this is when you flip the script entirely. Now, your obsession shifts from earning more to keeping more. During the cutting phase, you're doing the opposite of everything you did while bulking. You're analyzing every subscription, you're meal planning, you're optimizing your tax situation, you're refinancing the car loan, you're switching to the cheaper insurance that's actually the same coverage. You're learning to cook instead of ordering delivery. You're buying the bulk pack of paper towels, all the stuff that would have been a waste of mental energy when you were making $50,000 and needed to focus on skills development. That stuff now matters because you're making $95,000 and every dollar you don't spend is a dollar that can actually work for you. The cutting phase is where you watch your savings rate explode. You go from saving 10% to saving 30% or 40% without your income changing at all. This is when people look at your bank account and think you got a massive raise, but really you just stopped hemorrhaging money on things that don't matter. The discipline you're applying now would have been premature 5 years ago. Back then, you needed to invest in growth. Now, you need to harvest what you built. What's fascinating is that most financial advice completely ignores this framework. It treats everyone like they should be in permanent cutting mode. Save on coffee, cancel Netflix, use coupons. That advice might be correct for someone making $120,000 who's already maximized their income, but it's catastrophically wrong for someone making $40,000 who should be investing every available dollar an hour into increasing their market value. The opportunity cost of spending 2 hours clipping coupons when you could spend those 2 hours learning a skill that increases your lifetime earnings by $200,000 is insane. The people who build serious wealth understand something crucial. Your 20s are for bulking aggressively, almost recklessly. Your job is to increase your income as fast as humanly possible, even if it means your savings rate looks bad. Then your 30s are for cutting. You take that higher income you built and you optimize ruthlessly. You don't try to save your way to wealth from a $35,000 salary, and you don't keep job hopping into your 40s when you should be stacking cash. So, which phase are you actually in right now? Because I guarantee you're probably doing it wrong. Here's the hard truth that nobody wants to hear. If you're 26 years old making $48,000 and you're obsessing over whether you should buy the name brand cereal or the generic, you're optimizing the wrong variable. You're rearranging deck chairs on the Titanic. That $3 you save on cereal this week is completely irrelevant compared to the $30,000 salary increase you could unlock if you spent that mental energy learning a high-value skill instead. Let me break down what bulking actually looks like in practice, because most people think they're doing it when they're really not. Like, real bulking means you're treating yourself like a startup company in growth mode. Startups don't obsess over office supply costs when they're trying to capture market share. They spend aggressively on anything that drives growth, and they worry about profitability later. That's you in your 20s. You're investing in the online course, even though it costs $800 because it teaches you skills that could add $15,000 to your salary. You're buying the professional wardrobe, even though it hurts, because looking the part gets you in rooms you wouldn't access otherwise. You're paying for the networking dinner, even though it's expensive, because the connection you make could lead to your next job. You're moving to the expensive city, even though rent is brutal, because that's where the opportunities are concentrated. Notice what I'm not saying. I'm not saying buy stupid stuff. I'm not saying finance a luxury car or blow money on bottle service. I'm saying invest in income-generating assets, and the primary asset is you. Your skills, your network, your credentials, your positioning in the market. Every dollar that goes toward upgrading you is a dollar well spent during the bulking phase. Every dollar that goes toward looking rich is a wasted dollar. The math is simple, but brutal. If you're making $45,000 and you cut your expenses to the bone and save $10,000 this year, congratulations, you saved $10,000. But if you invested that same energy into switching industries or getting a certification and you jumped to $65,000, you just gave yourself a permanent $20,000 annual raise. You didn't save $10,000 once, you increased your earning power by $20,000 forever. Over a 30-year career, that one move is worth $600,000 before we even factor in subsequent raises building off that higher base. This is why penny pinching in your 20s is often a trap. It feels productive, it feels responsible, but it's tactical success at the cost of strategic failure. You're winning the battle and losing the war. Now let's talk about what happens when you miss the transition. This is where people really screw themselves. They get addicted to the bulking mentality and they never switch over. I've seen this with high earners who make $180,000 but still live like they're trying to prove something. They're still upgrading, still buying the new thing, still chasing the next status symbol. They never entered the cutting phase. They're just bulking at a higher altitude and they're going to bulk themselves right into a comfortable retirement at age 73. The cutting phase requires a completely different psychology. During bulking, your mantra is more, better, faster, higher. During cutting, your mantra is enough, sufficient, strategic, intentional. You stop asking, can I afford this? You start asking, does this actually improve my life in a measurable way, or am I just used to upgrading things? Here's what effective cutting looks like. You're making $95,000 now. Your rent is $1,800 for a one-bedroom in a decent area. You could afford $2,500 for a luxury place with a gym and a doorman. So the old bulking, you would have taken it. The cutting, you realize, is that extra $700 a month is $8,400 a year, which invested over 20 years at 8% returns is $412,000. You just chose between a doorman and $500,000. The doorman lost. You're driving a 2019 Honda that's paid off and runs perfectly. You could finance a 2024 Audi. Monthly payment would only be $650. The cutting, you recognizes that only is doing some seriously heavy lifting in that sense. That $650 is $7,800 annually, which over a car loan's lifetime while invested becomes generational wealth. The Audi lost. You're paying $180 a month for a phone plan with unlimited everything. You could switch to a $40 plan that covers everything you actually use. That's $1,680 a year you are lighting on fire. The cutting you makes the switch and feels smarter, not cheaper. The beautiful thing about cutting is that unlike bulking, it requires zero talent. You don't need to be smart. You don't need connections. You don't need credentials. You just need to be honest about what you actually value versus what you've been conditioned to want. That's it. Most people can't do it, not because it's hard, but because their ego won't let them. Here's the test to know which phase you should be in. Ask yourself this question. If I spent the next 12 months obsessively focused on increasing my income, could I realistically add $15,000 or more to my annual salary? If the answer is yes, you should be bulking. Every hour you spend optimizing your grocery bill is an hour you're not spending on the skill development or networking or job searching that could actually change your financial life. If the answer is no, if you've genuinely plateaued or you're in a position where income growth requires massive life changes you're not willing to make, then you should be cutting. Now, your optimization energy is correctly allocated. Now, the grocery comparison makes sense. Now the refinancing matters. Now the subscription audit is worth your time. The people who win at money do this sequentially, not simultaneously. They bulk hard in their 20s, they cut hard in their 30s, and by their 40s, they're coasting on the foundation they built. Meanwhile, everyone else is doing everything halfway. They're sort of trying to save while sort of trying to earn more, and they're achieving neither because focus beats balance every single time. So let me ask you directly, which phase are you in? And more importantly, are you actually executing it, or are you just pretending? Because if you're not honest about where you are, you're going to waste years spinning your wheels on tactics that don't match your reality. Let me show you what this looks like in practice with actual numbers because theory is useless without execution. Meet the bulking version of financial success. You're 26 years old, making $52,000 as a marketing coordinator. You could spend the next year clipping coupons and trying to get your grocery bill from $400 to $320. That's $960 saved annually. Congratulations, you're slightly less broke. Or you could spend that same year learning Google Ads certification, building a portfolio of freelance projects, and networking aggressively until you land a $68,000 position. That's $16,000 more per year. Even after taxes, you've added roughly $11,000 to your annual take-home. The coupon clipper saved $960. You made $11,000. That's not a small difference. That's an order of magnitude difference. The bulking mindset says your time is worth whatever your next income level is, not your current one. If you're making $50,000, but you could be making $75,000 with the right moves, then every hour you spend optimizing current expenses instead of pursuing that income jump is costing you the difference. Now flip it. You're 34. You've climbed the ladder. You're at $110,000, and realistically, your next meaningful promotion is 3 to 5 years away. You're senior enough that the easy jumps are gone. The next level requires political capital you don't have yet, or credentials that take years to build. This is when cutting becomes your highest ROI activity, because now finding $15,000 in your budget might take you 40 hours of focused effort over 3 months. Auditing subscriptions, refinancing your mortgage, switching insurance providers, negotiating your phone bill, selling stuff you don't use, that's $375 per hour of effective work. Show me the side hustle that pays $375 an hour. You can't bulk forever because eventually you hit ceiling effects. The market won't pay you more. Your industry has limits. Your energy has limits. And you can't cut forever because eventually you've optimized everything and you're just making yourself miserable over $12 decisions. The magic happens when you sequence them correctly. 20s are for bulking. Your expenses are naturally lower because you haven't accumulated the lifestyle yet. You don't have the mortgage, the kids, the car payments that make massive life changes feel impossible. This is when you can sleep on a friend's couch for 3 months while you study for a certification. This is when you can move to a new city for a better job without coordinating school districts. Your risk tolerance is higher, your obligations are lower, and most importantly, compound interest is on your side. An extra $20,000 earned at 25 and invested for 40 years becomes $435,000 at retirement. That same $20,000 earned at 45 becomes $93,000. Time is the ingredient you can't buy later. 30s are for cutting. You've built the income. You've probably accumulated some lifestyle inflation along the way. Now you optimize. You look at that $2,400 car payment and ask if you actually need it. You examine the $250 a month you're spending on services you signed up for and forgot about. You stop trying to impress people and start trying to build wealth. This is when you realize that defending your income from leaking out is worth more than trying to squeeze out another $5,000 raise that comes with $8,000 in additional stress and expenses. And here's what nobody tells you about the transition between these phases. It feels wrong. If you spent your 20s in bulking mode, constantly pushing for more, the shift to cutting feels like you're giving up. It feels like you're settling. Your ego interprets optimization as admission of defeat. You have to override that voice. You have to recognize that cutting isn't retreat, it's strategy. A fighter doesn't bulk all the way to the match. They cut to make weight, to optimize, to show up at their fighting best. The people who never make this transition are the ones earning $150,000 and living like they make $180,000. They're in the worst possible position. High income, high stress, zero margin, no accumulation. They're running the treadmill at maximum speed and going nowhere. So here's your action plan, and it's simpler than you think. If you're under 32 and making less than $80,000, stop worrying about your latte budget. Seriously, stop. Every mental calorie you spend on small optimizations is a calorie you're not spending on income acceleration. Your job is to skill up, network up, and negotiate up. Read the books, take the courses, apply to the better jobs, have the uncomfortable conversation with your boss. Switch companies if you have to. This is your bulking phase. Act like it. If you're over 32 or making more than $100,000, the game has changed. Now you audit. Now you cut the subscriptions. Now you refinance. Now you question every recurring expense. Now you track where the money goes and you eliminate everything that isn't directly contributing to your life satisfaction or long-term goals. This is your cutting phase. Execute it ruthlessly. And if you're somewhere in the middle, pick a lane based on your actual opportunity, not your age. If you're 38, but you just discovered a career path that could double your income, go bulk. If you're 27, but you're already at the top of your field's pay scale, start cutting. The framework isn't about age, it's about leverage. It's about knowing which game you're playing and refusing to dilute your focus by playing both games badly. Most people never figure this out. They spend 40 years doing a mediocre version of everything, never committing fully to either strategy, and they wonder why their financial situation never transforms. You now know better. You know that wealth is built in phases, not through balanced moderation. You bulk when bulking makes sense. You cut when cutting makes sense. And you never ever confuse the two. That's how you actually win, not by working harder at everything, but by working strategically at the right thing. Look, I'm not going to tell you to smash the like button or subscribe or any of that. You're an adult. You can decide if this was worth your time. But here's what I will say. Right now, you're in one of two positions. Either you just realized you've been wasting years optimizing expenses when you should have been building income, or you just realized you've been chasing raises while your money evaporates through 1,000 tiny leaks you've been ignoring. Both realizations sting. Good, use that. Because the difference between people who build actual wealth and people who just talk about it comes down to this. The wealthy ones picked a strategy and committed completely. They didn't hedge, they didn't try to save money while also maximizing income growth. They went all in on bulking until it stopped working. Then they went all in on cutting. You've got the framework now. You know which phase you're supposed to be in. The question is whether you'll actually execute or whether you'll keep doing this weird financial lukewarm thing where you're kind of trying at everything and excelling at nothing. Your 20s are burning away whether you use them or not. Your income potential has an expiration date, and every month you spend optimizing the wrong variable is a month you can't get back. So stop pretending you can do both. Pick your phase, commit fully, and actually build something instead of just staying busy. That's it. No, that's the whole game.